right. Hello, everyone. Megan Taslarman here in Thyroid Healthy Balance to deliver the live training for tonight on the 5 ways gluten can sabotage your thyroid and autoimmunity and how much it depends on your body. All right. So if you're tuning in here for the first time, give us a heart, give us a thumbs up, show us some love. We're here tonight to support you, and I'm curious who's new here in the group and what you're here for. Are you here for education? Are you here for support and guidance? Are you here because you're scratching your head wondering which way to go next and you're unsure of your next step? So if either of those ring true, you're exactly in the right place. We can offer support in all of those areas for you. So let's get into the live training. And certainly, if you can't make it live and you're watching the replays, please just type #replay in the comments. That helps me to see who's watched the live training and be better placed to support you either soon or down the track. Alrighty, so the 5 ways gluten may fuel autoimmune thyroid activity. Okay, so my intention for tonight is around education. Okay, so I'm not here challenging anything at all. I'm not here to provide fear or anything. It's basically to give you some clarity around what has been shown in the science and also what you can do just on a personal level, in terms of understanding what's going on in your body. So a little bit of self-inquiry. Does that sound good? If that feels like that's going to be relevant for you, just give me a thumbs up here now. Because, you can actually just read anything and everything and you will see a whole heap of information say it doesn't matter about gluten, eat your wheat, doesn't really matter, it doesn't make any difference. Or you can read a whole heap of information that says definitely go gluten-free. It's absolutely poison for your body. Don't touch it. It's going to make your thyroid worse. And you know what? It's really interesting because the more I practice in this space, the more I see and understand that it truly is no one size fits all. Because for some people, it will be a poison in your body. And for some people, just a little bit of gluten will really throw you off track. Yet for other people, there seems to be more resilience. And it's not impacting the thyroid in the same way as it will be impacting somebody else. And that is the truth of the matter. This is why I find working with thyroid in this space extremely interesting because it is quite elusive, it's very complex, and there's no one size fits all. And it's really about delving into the science and the science of your body to find out actually what's going on. Alrighty, so, excuse me. So let's get into it. So universally, gluten is not bad. However, as I mentioned, it's worse for some people than for other people. And often the thyroid becomes the collateral damage, not actually the starting point. All right. So, you know what? It's just really important. And this is what I teach my clients to really get extremely acute and clever at listening to your own body, really tuning in a really grounded way. And that can make all of the difference because that's what's going to give you the little tweaks and changes across the time as you craft your dietary blueprint. All right. So I'm just going to clarify a little bit of language here. So first of all, let's just get a little bit of precision around wording. So there are different biological responses that often get lumped together, okay? So for example, celiac disease is autoimmune and that it affects a small amount of the population. However, it is not uncommon for someone with celiac disease to also have Hashimoto's. Okay, there's quite a lot of clinical trials that show that if one person has one or the other, there can be a knock-on effect. So, for example, if you have celiac disease, it's not uncommon to see a knock-on effect to thyroid. You know, poor little thyroid gets a hit when the gut is hurting. And vice versa, if you have Hashimoto's, it is not uncommon if it's, you know, left unchecked for that to kind of tip over and cause celiac disease, okay? We also have non-celiac wheat sensitivity. So this is very common. So this is where, you know, there's no celiac disease present. However, there is wheat sensitivity. It can be extremely difficult to diagnose. And this is where functional testing can become really relevant just to see what your immune system is reacting to. Then there can be gluten intolerance with immune reactivity. Okay. And also there can be carbohydrate intolerance or carbohydrate overwhelm. You know, so I'm talking about the frequency and the quantity of carbohydrates in general can actually cause an impact to your energy systems, to your energy, and that tends to be kind of wrapped up in a picture of blood sugar issues or blood sugar dysregulation. Okay. Okay, so two people can eat the same slice of bread. They both may have Hashimoto's. One is fine, the other one bloats, has brain fog, flares, and crashes. So same food, different biology. Blanket rules actually fail because the biology is contextual. So what do we mean by gluten? Okay, so before I get into what do we mean by gluten, I'm just going to check in, see who's here. If you're watching, say hello. I'm just going to check in the comments here. Okay, all right, there's a fair bit of activity. Hey, Sue, lovely to see you. Fantastic. Hey, Shell. Hey, Leanne. All right, so certainly, you know, my team are tagging you. They're tagging you because they believe that you may want to watch this. So if you're tagged and then you come in to watch this, just type a hashtag replay so that we know that you've watched this. All right, now down the track in about 20, 30 minutes in, I'm going to be talking about the 5 ways that gluten can sabotage your thyroid and impact your thyroid. But firstly, I'm just going to go through some background and talking about gluten in general and, you know, talking about the evolutionary mismatch so that you can understand why it's such a problem in our society. Okay, so getting back to the topic. What do we mean by gluten? So the gluten-containing grains are wheat, rye, and barley. All right. These are commonly associated with intestinal inflammation, immune activation, digestive disruption or digestive issues, and downstream, meaning there's a knock-on effect to thyroid stress or thyroid autoimmunity. Okay. So gluten isn't just a gut issue. You know, for many people, it becomes an immune and inflammatory issue, and the thyroid is right in the firing line. However, it's going to be different for everybody, all right? It depends on your level of sensitivity, depends on your root cause as well, all right? So let's just talk about the evolutionary mismatch. And I will give my opinion at the very end of this live training. So if you're wanting my personal opinion on, you know, diet and wellness moving forward, I'll certainly provide that at the end of this live training. But you know what? It's really important for you to fine tune what's right for you. And self-inquiry can go a long way. Okay. So the evolutionary mismatch. Let's get into that. So historically, humans consumed an ancient wheat called einkorn. It was in the wild and it had a lot of seeds, therefore fiber in it. It had no processing very little processing, definitely no modern machinery processing, and it provided a lot of fiber. There was also wild emmer, another ancient grain, and these two were eaten very sporadically and seasonally as well, so therefore quite rarely. You know, it wasn't something that our ancient humans had for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and as a snack. Certainly not that way. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm very, very doubtful that our genetics have had the time to catch up, to evolve, to catch up, to withstand what's going on with wheat today. Okay. So fast forward to the 1960s, there was selective breeding with the genome, the wheat genome, to obtain a higher gluten content, faster growth, and also be pest resistant. So this has been the problem, like trying to feed the world and along the way forgetting about keeping the world healthy. All right. And this involved ultra processing, stripping and bleaching of the grain as well. So the goal of the big conglomerates wasn't digestion. It was about efficiency, growing larger crops, feeding the planet, and ensuring it's pest resistant. Getting higher amounts of gluten so that we can get fluffier white bread, etc., etc. So, modern wheat, therefore, is like software in your body never downloaded, so it keeps crashing the system. Modern wheat is like software your body never downloaded, and it keeps crashing your system. Okay? This is the evolutionary mismatch. Who likes that? Give me a heart. I think that was really good. Wasn't mine, by the way, but I think that was really, really good. All right, so modern wheat. Okay, so it tends to, in many individuals, inflame the gut, causing intestinal irritation, gut permeability, immune system activation at the level of the gut, at the mucous membrane level of the gut, which disrupts nutrient absorption and increases systemic inflammation as well. So when the gut barrier is inflamed, the signaling is skewed. The immune system stays switched on. And for those of you, some of my clients are in this group who've done the deep dive functional testing, you will know if this is you, if your secretory IgA is really high. You will know this is you if you've tested positive to gliadin or wheat in a gut panel test. Okay. All right. So what happens is the thyroid signaling becomes inefficient. All right. That's basically the bottom line. So this is why thyroid symptoms often don't resolve with gut inflammation, especially when it's caused by gluten, but not only if it's caused by gluten, just gut inflammation in general. So I'm going to go through the systemic symptoms. So these are connected, they're not scattered, and they may be more connected than you think. Our body is not just the sum of its parts, like it's a whole, we are a whole organism. So for example, in the digestive system, typical signs and symptoms, so just, you might want to get a pen and paper and write these down. So typical signs and symptoms are bloating, IBS or irritable bowel syndrome symptoms, diarrhea, constipation. In the skin, typical symptoms can be psoriasis, eczema, dermatitis, or just random rashes or skin flares. Neurological, nervous system and mood, brain fog, anxiety, irritability, like a heightened premenstrual syndrome or, depression, headaches and migraines is another one as well. Gluten can disrupt the respiratory pathways as well and worsen asthma-like symptoms. inflame the alveoli within the lung and cause airway inflammation. And of course, thyroid related, we're talking symptoms like fatigue, inflammatory flares, poor hormone conversion, and autoimmune activation. So the thyroid is often not the starting point. Okay, it's the collateral damage. Okay, often it starts with something else going on. And this is relevant for you to understand this as a part of your health story, to understand what is most prominent and which rabbit hole to go down when you're finding the root cause. If you're new here to the group, you'll know that I'm a big fan of finding the root cause or the root causes and also the exacerbating factors, because when we go down and then heal those base layers, that's where we actually begin to thrive, because otherwise we're just taking supplements to basically plug the holes in the bucket and we're not actually generating true healing that's sustainable to live the life that you love and to have the longevity that you're after and to have the energy that you're after. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about wheat versus gluten versus carbohydrate load. So everybody reacts differently, okay? Some people react specifically to wheat. For others, wheat is not an issue. It's gluten across all sources, which basically means that wheat is an issue. It's just a different part of the immune system, and you'll understand that when I break it down, the 5 ways in which gluten can sabotage your thyroid, okay? Daily grain frequency, that can be an issue for many people, depending on your metabolism. And if you've done a HTMA, you'll understand what your metabolic type is like. And just total carbohydrate load in general. So just to reflect, well, not really reflect, but just to touch on, our ancestors didn't eat grains. You know, they didn't have it for breakfast, lunch, dinner. They didn't have snacks. It was less frequent. So arguably more healthy and most likely receive better in our body. Also, I may just touch on a point. Sometimes it's not always what you're eating, but it's the frequency of that as well. Okay. And this is relevant when we see what is actually occurring in terms of your immune system. You know, what is your immune system firing at? What is it reacting to? Right. And there may be more than one of these 5 ways that's relevant to you. Hey, Emma. Hey, Emma Jane. Lovely to see you here. Fantastic. Beautiful. All right. So let's get into it now. This is the core teaching of this live training, the 5 mechanisms of how gluten can sabotage your thyroid. All right. So firstly, number 1, immune activation and antibody signaling. Okay, so gliadin, which is one of the major culprit proteins. So we've got 2 proteins in wheat. We've got gliadin and glutenin. So gliadin can stimulate immune cells, which increases inflammatory signaling. All right, so in susceptible individuals, this will increase your TPO autoantibodies, and also your thyroglobulins may rise as well. Okay, so the TPO, just as a little reminder, your TPO, which is your thyroperoxidase autoantibody, is the enzyme system that actually pulls in the tyrosine and the iodine to make your thyroxine. You know, the thyroglobulin is a cell within the thyroid that actually makes all that happen, okay? And both of these, we can have autoantibodies, which are high, meaning that the body is attacking that part of the body, okay, via the immune system. Okay, so this immune activation and antibody signaling also causes immune surveillance and an immune surveillance increase within thyroid tissues. So that obviously then causes or leads to autoimmune flares. Okay, so this can occur despite normal thyroid hormone levels. Okay, so it's really important to understand and know what your full thyroid is doing, like all of the parameters, not just the T4 and T3, but also your thyroid autoantibodies. I like to do reverse T3 as well and see really what's going on. TSH is just the standard that will be done by the pathology centers, and that is routinely prescribed by doctors to diagnose. It doesn't diagnose. It just gives you a little glimpse of what could be happening, but it doesn't really give you the full picture at all. Okay, so in a snapshot from that, gluten doesn't cause Hashimoto's, but it can fuel the immune system and it can fire up an already burning immune system, all right? So it can fire it up, which will down the track potentially cause hypo or hyperthyroidism through the autoimmune thyroid link. All right, number 2. Hilarious. Oh, I'd love to know. I think I missed you when your comment came in. Hilarious, Emma. Yeah, I'll have to go back and watch. Alrighty, so number 2, gut barrier disruption. So this is otherwise known as leaky gut, or it could be also termed intestinal permeability. So gluten can increase the zonulin pathway. So the zonulin pathway is what actually, if that is disrupted, it loosens the tight junctions. So if you can imagine your gut membrane, okay, so your gut membrane has tight junctions that are really, really tight, and that just prevents larger proteins and molecules from diffusing through the gut membrane to elicit an immune response. So when the zonulin pathway is disrupted, this can cause leaky gut, and it's often wheat that is the culprit. Sorry, gluten in wheat. Gluten, which basically means all of the gluten-containing grains, of which the main one is wheat. So that's where this would be a problem. And in one of the gut function tests, not gut function tests, excuse me, in one of the functional tests that we do for those that it's really relevant to is we do a gut panel to highlight whether the zonulin pathway is impacted. Okay, so that's where you can definitively find out whether that is impacted, which is highly relevant because it just gives another piece to the puzzle. If the zonulin pathway is compromised, this allows food particles, microbes, toxins to pass through, and that's going to inflame your system. It's going to cause systemic inflammation. It's going to fuel immune reactivity, and it's most likely going to cause problems to more than just one area of dis-ease in your body, which is kind of why autoimmune diseases tend to hang out together. They're a big happy family hanging out. But if we get to the root cause, we could often bring symptomatic relief and resolution to a lot of those autoimmune challenges. All right. Okay. Alrighty. So, do I have anything more to say on that? So the autoimmune loop. So we've got gut disruption, immune activation, tissue attack, inflammation, which then circles back to create more gut disruption. So it's a bit of an autoimmune loop that occurs there. Okay, any questions on that? Just ask. Just reading back through the comments, Emma, just clarifying, hilarious was an auto correction for higher. Okay, I'm not quite sure there. Never mind, let's move on. Alrighty, so number 3, molecular mimicry. So molecular mimicry, if you Google molecular mimicry, you'll get a really elaborate breakdown of what that is. Basically, it's immune confusion. The gliadin as the main protein in wheat or gluten that causes disruption. This is structurally very, very similar to the protein in the thyroid gland. Okay, so thyroid proteins, specifically thyroglobulin. All right. So when the immune system attacks gluten, it mistakenly recognizes thyroid tissue, and the results include sustained antibody or autoantibody production and persistent immune attack, which causes flares and shifts in the autoantibodies. So this is when, you might be doing all the right things, thinking that you're doing all the right things, but something is being missed. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, if gluten is an issue for you specifically, sometimes it can just get through because it is everywhere. And you really need to be vigilant if you have a gluten issue. Because every time there's a drop of gluten in your ocean, it can elicit an immune response. It's not necessarily the amount. It can literally be as small as a drop to create that trigger in your body if you're highly sensitive to that. Alrighty, so number 4, impaired nutrient absorption. So this is where if the gut is inflamed, you may have other digestive issues going on as well, and key thyroid nutrients are affected. Nutrients such as selenium, zinc, iron, iodine, magnesium. Okay, so to name a few. So this is where, basically the damage is being done, and as a knock-on effect, there is impaired nutrient absorption. Or you have other issues further up in your digestive tract, such as digestive enzyme issues, or maybe it's a fueling issue. Maybe you're just not getting that nutrient-dense food in. So this can cause issues with your thyroid as well, because if we don't have the key backbone of minerals to create the hormones and do the conversions, well, then we're going to be on our back foot 100%. Okay, so this is a key issue, can be a key issue, especially, might I say, with modern day farming practices, conventional farming practices, which where there are crops that are highly sprayed by glyphosate, Roundup. Glyphosate is 50% of Roundup. The other 50% of Roundup are arguably more toxic chemicals. And if you have the type of system where you are a canary in a coal mine, meaning you're highly sensitive, well then, this glyphosate residue and within the matrix of the food is going to disrupt your hormones and cause issues with your gut and potentially, amongst many other things, cause autoimmune, but also impair your nutrient absorption at the level of the gut. Because at the level of the gut, we've got the mucous membrane barrier, we've got our brush border enzymes, we've got our malt and our galt, and all of this works together because at the end of the day, this is the seat, this is the first line of defense of your immune system. This is the place where the external world meets internal body matrix, which is you. All right? So, there's a lot of screening going on, getting rid of toxins, particles, parasites, bacteria that shouldn't be there, like all of the things. So, when this delicate system is disrupted, which typically can occur over time if not looked after or just with, eating the wrong foods for your body, that's where, we impair nutrient absorption. Alrighty. Hey Emma. Yeah, got it. Alrighty. So number 5, systemic inflammatory load. So this is where autoimmune disease is a real burden, right? There may be multiple issues of the previous points that I've discussed that have occurred, and this has most likely occurred over time. All right, so gluten and, gluten can be an ongoing issue, which will eventually break down the gut barrier and break down your system after decades. Okay, unless you actually have the autoimmune celiac disease, it can actually take decades for that to manifest. All right, so it's the system inflammatory load that really will exacerbate your autoimmune condition. And it will depend on that as to how unwell you are and how much you're struggling with your autoimmune condition, right? Because this is one area that can impact your thyroid and impact autoimmune in general. However, it's not the only area. There are multiple areas. There are dozens of areas. There are actually tens of, I don't know, I don't want to say hundreds, but there are so many different areas, the way you live your life, the impact of stress, where you are in your hormonal transition in life. Are you going through perimenopause? Are you pregnant right now? Are you going through puberty? Are you postmenopausal? There are so many other elements to consider when we're looking at the severity of your autoimmune condition, thyroid impact, and this is one of them, right? It is a very important one, and it's really, really extra important for you to understand your body. Alrighty, so just to group back into ancient grains and alternatives, just to give you a little bit of insight that you may wish to explore. So some better tolerated gluten containing grains are spelt and einkorn, kamut, durum, and freekeh, sorry. So this will depend on whether you've got a gluten intolerance or not, right? So there's gluten sensitivity, there's gluten intolerance. Okay, there's impact on thyroid, which is severe or mild. So it's really important to know what's going on for you, okay? Non-gluten whole foods are buckwheat, quinoa, millet, sorghum, rice, amaranth, teff, and chia, right? My favorite is quinoa, right? In fact, today I had red quinoa, organic red quinoa cooked up. Now, buckwheat, that, even though it says buckwheat, it is a gluten-free grain. But, you may actually react to a non-gluten food, a non-gluten grain. Personally, I don't do well on buckwheat. And when I actually did my immune panel, my functional tests, which highlighted what foods I was reacting to, I was extremely high with buckwheat. And it's really interesting because I always had a sixth sense that buckwheat didn't really work for me. And I always used to just think, oh, it's gluten-free, yeah, but no, I'm not going to have that. It was really interesting. And that was decades ago when I started to really feel into, oh, wow, well, that's given me evidence that this is worth inquiring about and exploring and really tuning into my body and tuning into my gut instinct to learn more about the science of my body. Anyway, this live training is not about that. We'll talk about that another time. So let's get back to the topic on hand. So the most honest self-inquiry method is this. Step 1, I'm going to break this down. These are the steps that you can offer yourself across the next 6 to 8 weeks to really inquire and learn more about your body. So step 1, remove wheat and gluten grains for 6 to 8 weeks. And during that time, take down some notes. Just observe your digestion, your skin, your mood, your thyroid symptoms. Step 2, trial non-wheat gluten grains. Just trial them. Be strict. Okay, this is just for 2 weeks. And step 3, compare the results. How did you feel after having non-gluten grains compared to when you removed wheat and gluten across 6 to 8 weeks? Compare the results, okay? So the outcomes, there could be some symptom return, which indicates gluten sensitivity. There could be that there's no symptoms at all, which indicates more of a wheat sensitivity. And, if there's a high intake, also monitor how much you're having, because that will give you an indication of carbohydrate intolerance as well. So this is data. This is data about your body. And it's just a great, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you could be sitting on the fence, you may be in this group learning and understanding more about your body. Why not do this for the next 6 to 8 weeks? Why not do this? At the very least, you're going to find out so much more about your body. At the very best, you're going to understand specifically what's going on in your body. Okay? All right, so here's the roundup. This isn't about fear. This isn't about fear mongering or anything like that. This is about understanding the best foods for your body. Gluten and wheat are neither good or bad. It's information. All right. So when you listen to your body properly and understand what's actually going on and reacting in your body, your thyroid will thank you. Okay. So now, my personal opinion. I believe because our ancient ancestors used to have grains few and far between and actually thrived that way, because they've done studies on your gut microbiome which show that our ancestors had a much broader microbiome compared to the modern day human. In fact, most gut panels have very little diversity of microbes in your gut, which basically means we have these modern day diseases which are on the rise. So due to that fact, my personal opinion is go without wheat, go without gluten. If you must, or if you know and feel in your body that you are not highly sensitive and you may have done some functional testing and you don't have certain autoimmunity markers or pointers from that, I highly recommend that you choose a sourdough, and you may even wish to choose like a spelt or one of the ancient grain type, like emma or emmet or something like that. Something that's more akin to ancient grains before the modern technology of stripping and bleaching and processing to an inch of its life, this genetically modified grain. So that's my personal intake. However, I'm also all about the science. So I like to do the functional testing. So if you're curious and you're wanting to do the functional testing, just type functional testing. And that's what we do in the thyroid restoration roadmap. That's actually one of the first steps, is we do a series of functional testing that is relevant for you and your body with what's going on for you, especially if you have gut symptoms. We're going to be doing the gut panels and the autoimmunity panels and the gut barrier panels, etc. And then from that data, we are going to be able to get really specific on helping you craft your dietary blueprint. So if that's something that you're after or would like to inquire more about, just type functional testing. We can set up a call, have a chat, and work out a plan that's going to be tailored for you and how we can help you across that time. So if you are watching the replay, be sure to watch drop hashtag replay. And if this landed for you, if this really landed for you, I'd really, really love you to type in the word understand or understanding. All right, because it's really important that, what I'm delivering is taken on by you or understood by you so that we can deliver more live trainings like this. If there are any gaps or if there are any questions surrounding this, please let's keep this going for the next couple of days. Drop in your questions. I will pop back in from time to time and answer your questions. And I look forward to starting or continuing this conversation. All right, that's it from me. And fantastic, Peter. Yes, we'll reach out to you and we'll get a session booked in so that we can have a discussion on that with you. And Emma, double O is preferred. Absolutely. Thank you so much for reminding me on that, Emma. There is a certain wheat that is Italian derived, and it isn't genetically modified, and it is more akin to the ancient grain, and it tends to be more tolerated. And I'm actually going to just tell a little story here. So thank you, Emma, for popping that in the chat, because you've reminded me. One of my colleagues used to practice in Glebe, and she had, a lot of, she was practicing in the space of gut issues. And given that she was in the inner west part of Sydney, there are a lot of people from Italy or Italian descent living in that area. And what she noticed is whenever this demographic went back to their homeland and had a holiday, they would have wheat and gluten back in Italy and their gut would be fine. Their IBS symptoms would go away and their symptoms would go away and typically improve. Then when they came back to Australia and had the wheat that was dished up here, their symptoms came back. And I would say that that is down to the type of wheat and the type of flour. And also, I would say that there's most likely history in that particular population that have evolved because, let's face it, not every culture has pasta and pizza the way this culture does. But I would say that that has something to do with their specific genetic evolution as well. But I find that that's really interesting. So if you find that you do better with double O flour, that's something that you could pick up in the supermarket. However, just understand also that there still could be an autoimmunity issue going on that you just haven't picked up. Because you're tolerating that flour better doesn't mean that there isn't a response going on in your body in terms of the autoantibodies. So I just will leave that there for you to just ponder and consider. Alrighty, that's it. That's it from me. Have a fantastic evening, and I look forward to our next live training. And for those of you who are reaching out, we look forward to our discussions with you. Alrighty, bye for now.